Hey guys, it's Sugar, and I'm here with my husband Jeff.
Hello.
And today we were going to talk to you about the top 10 anime from 2017.
Yes, out of what,
Yeah.
out of what we've watched. I mean,
We tried our
busy
best.
people.
Yeah. Jeff watched his share. We watched some together, then I watched some. And I tried to basically the last few days binge everything I possibly could. So there are some things obviously that won't be on this list. If you have questions why, leave them in the comments below. I likely have a reason why. Either I never got to it, didn't like it, you name it. There's a reason for everything.
No food wars.
I think we made that abundantly clear why that's not on this list.
There's maybe a couple immediately because some other people have put out top tens. There won't be Attack on Titan for obvious reasons. Which
I made a video.
Very obvious. Food Wars. We are not fans of that style of anime. We get why it's there. We understand. There is anime we like that is mostly fan service. We get it. It's just not for us.
That kind anyways. Food and fan service. There's lots of things that watch with fan service, and it's A-okay sometimes.
Yeah.
So instead of delving right into the list right away, we thought we'd get honorable mentions out of the way in case some of you are questioning. So we have 3 honorable mentions, and we'll go into our top 10 list. So the first I will bring up is, actually before I say that even, Jeff and I agreed on the list. We debated back and forth before we started the podcast of what we felt should be here because Jeff had differing opinions than myself, so we argued it out.
There's one.
There's one that's on the honorable
in particular
mentions.
that I would maybe even crack my top 6 maybe, but
you're
like, nope.
I whittled them down. We'll talk about that in a second. So we'll start first with Konohana Kitan.
It's sugary sweet. It's everything that you would expect from that style of anime.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. We still watch it. It's just one of those things where if you're talking about a top 10, especially in a year that has had some absolutely transformative anime, in my opinion, having something that is really good in just kind of being, entertaining and sweet and whatnot just doesn't cut it. We were talking before the podcast that maybe if both of us had more of a background in Japanese mythology, it would maybe hit a little bit harder, as Konohana Kitan delves a lot into that sort of stuff.
And nothing's wrong with that. It's just the fact of not getting the most out of it, so to speak. It's like Drifters. We tried to watch it. There was too much historical references and kind of Japanese mythology and other things, as far as I remember, and that's why we didn't end up watching it because we didn't feel like we'd give it the fair shake it deserved. Where Konohana Kitan is pleasurable just to watch in general. We have, which I've spoken about in another video, it's foxes that run a spa, the Konohana Kitan, and or Konohanate, and it's just basically people that are transferring from the spirit world, from the real world to the spirit world, people who are going back and forth. And it's really pleasant, really lovely. The animation's beautiful. The colors are beautiful. The characters are pleasant and kind of a stereotypical for what you'd see for a slice of life or anything kind of in this vein. So it was enjoyable. Nothing was wrong with it. I actually really loved the Halloween episode because I'm very much into Halloween. Even though this year you didn't get to see that part of me so much. It was really, really busy. But my favorite time of the year is Halloween, so that made me really happy. Yeah,
I think I said it the very first episode, and I've said it ever since. It's a solid 7. Some years a 7 would make the top 10. This year is not one of those years.
This year has been weird in the sense that we've had clear home runs, and then ones that were, can I say, good, but on different levels, like you're saying, deeper kind of threads here. Yeah. And we'll get into that, but I think that's all that really needs to be said about Konohana Kitan because we've already kind of gone over it.
If you're looking for something that's just going to give you a smile on a cold winter day, that's all that it ever promises to do.
Spirits, cute girls, great characters, fun characters,
lovely animation,
pleasant. You'll love it.
And I believe it's being dubbed in a similar timeline as the sub is coming out. So if you're not a sub person, you're only a couple of episodes behind right now in the dubs.
I don't remember this schedule, but probably.
Yeah, it's a couple of episodes back.
Second honorary mention is Suriduri Children, or as Jeff calls it, Surizuri, because it's called differently depending who you speak to. The reason I really liked it was because it was really funny. And I thought it was so spot on for how awkward love is in middle school and high school. I thought that was really good. I think the reason why I didn't make it onto the list is because it's just following several couples and the just kind of random everyday stuff. There wasn't like necessarily a story or like anything serious going on. It's just kind of funny, pointing at something that's funny that a lot of people might not think is funny until you see it together. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You're seeing how awkward people are, and when you're younger, how you think like stupid things like, oh, this would be the best avenue to go, and then of course they misinterpret it, and then it gets worse, and then it just kind of escalates, and it's funny, but
it's what I will preface this by saying is that it is the kind of humor it is based 100% on social awkwardness and just total misunderstandings of like
just
basic social cues. And I mean that's kids, but I mean if some people are like more likely to be kind of like cringe at that sort of stuff instead of finding it funny,
some
it
people
won't
might find
be
it
for
cringy.
You. A couple of the relationships they show, I almost just wanted to fast forward through because I was like, I don't care about these people. I don't care about this story. I don't like these people in some cases. Right. So it was a little uneven for me overall.
For sure.
I started liking it more as it went on. First few episodes, because Sugar was the one who told me, like, you know what, give this a shot. She watched through it first. Now, first couple episodes, I was like, I don't know, like, this is really awkward.
Yeah, Jeff does not like awkward moments very much. They're more, like, cringy to him, or to me, like, especially when it's dealing with romance, it's funny to me, because I'm like, it nailed it. That's exactly what happened.
And I had a much different junior high and high school experience than Sugar did. So, like, when she was like, this sort of thing, like, this totally happened to me, I was like, what? No, that doesn't make any sense. I don't understand how that works. She's like, it didn't happen for you? Like, no, I was not involved in anything romantic at all.
Romantic hijinks.
in high school. I didn't peak until my mid-20s. So.
I guess the other thing I can say that's kind of one of the reasons why I didn't make it onto the list is some of the voice acting in the dub is bad. Like, not the main characters.
Main characters are pretty
It's like good. Secondary that it's like all of a sudden you're like, what the hell?
Did they get a secretary to come in and read this paper?
If you do listen to it, this is one of the times where I'm like, maybe do the sub. You might be better off. The dub overall was okay, but couple of the voices were cringy. Third, and the one that's most contentious between Jeff and I, Jeff had it higher, and then I was totally... That's the frustrating thing, and that's why it made me have, like, a dilemma the last few days, of course, because this wasn't, like, spur of the moment thinking of this list. This has been going on for days. And I'm talking about Children of the Whales. Mm-hmm. I was so on board with loving it, and I was ready. It had to do with history. I thought this is going to be our anime of the season. And then it just shit the bed for me. That's like, oh... And I'll explain it in a second. I'm sure Jeff has something to say about the look on his face, but...
You and I just have a fundamental difference of opinion on this, and that can be due to the fact that you are seeing something in it that you are prescribing to other anime that have made mistakes that you think is following, which...
So what he's referencing is that I've made reference to this when watching it, is that I find it makes a lot of the same mistakes that the second season of Attack on Titan made. And by that, I mean that it doesn't know what it wants to be. So, for example, without spoiling anything, we're hoping to have no spoilers throughout all of this, I would think. Yeah. But if it slips, well, I'll put it in the video. I'll put, hey, this was mentioned. But for Children of the Whales, like, it made you feel like when you first started watching it that we're going to go through, like, historical... aspects of the show. We're going to be in the perspective of the Shakuro, which is our main character, who is an archivist, and we're going to go with him. But then as time goes on, we get perspectives that aren't from his perspective, and it changes things. Then it's not so much about history anymore, it's about war. Then it's not about war, it's about different concepts of what it wants to be. And then it doesn't introduce characters, and it just rushes other characters in. And it just kind of jerks you around, and the second it wants to give you information, you're like, this is the time. This is where you're going to tell me all of this shit makes sense. And they're like, nope, back to war. And I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life that you've done done this to me? Like, it's like, why won't you let, like, I think it wasn't until episode 5 where we got a bunch of, like, just plot dumping, just dumping all this information. Then it went back to fighting, and I'm like, whoa, back up. Like, figure out what the fuck you want to be, and then go back to fighting. But it's just like, anytime you thought you were on the verge of learning something, it was like, death, kill. And it's like, now it's back to scratch. And it's like, no, we're not back to square one. We're back to bullshit. And it's like,
as you can tell, Sugar gets a little animated.
There's things that there's like, I'm waving my hands now explaining, that's why Jeff's laughing at me. There's like nothing explained, and it's like, oh, you know this thing we fully explained? Well, that doesn't apply to this because it's different. You never said that. Fuck you.
And we're in. I have a difference of opinion to Sugar in the fact that the world itself it's a mystery because everything is a mystery to this group of people. Without spoiling anything, the group of people that we tend to follow, not just the main character, Chakro, but all of his, friends and the culture that exists. Mm-hmm. Think of it, it's basically kind of like an isolated island. Mm-hmm. This entire culture has never experienced war. They've never experienced different cultures. They never experienced any of this sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of this, and they also, by the way, there's lots of magic and stuff that's happening too that they even say in the very first episode, they don't really understand. They don't understand why certain people have this magical ability and others don't. And so a whole bunch of stuff is happening that they themselves have no idea why.
Right, but then it's saying like, oh, you're in this role with the archivist. Then it gives you information that he would never know. Like, we went around one situation I won't get into, but there's a whole scene, and Jeff was like, well, maybe somebody told him about it later, and he jotted it down. I said, no, there was nobody at that fucking site. Nobody was there watching it. Nobody saw this happen except for us as the audience. We should not have that information. And he was just like,
Yeah, okay. It takes some liberty in its storytelling where it doesn't 100% stay in the perspective of Chakra.
And then somebody will just show up and they'll start doing something important. I'm like, who the hell is this? Like, we don't know.
If somebody's just going to show up randomly, like they've already shown that can happen. Other cultures have barged in on this island and made their presence known. We've already talked about war.
Just for the record, it's not an island, it's a mud whale, but it's basically like an island, long story short.
Yeah. And so basically, I'm the more positive one. I tend to see the more positive in these things. Sugar is a little bit more
I feel like it's screwing me around.
And also what feeds into this is that people who like the manga have also said that you don't necessarily get a lot of answers, which is
and people think that
cardinal sin.
People think that I hate that you don't get answers. That's not true. I like anime that lets you know that not having answers is okay. And I'll get to one of them. One of them's on our list. Mm-hmm. And it makes it clear that not getting answers is part of the journey. It's exploring, it's finding things out, you're looking at things, you might not get answers, that's fine. But in this case, especially since somebody is an archivist and they let you know that this is what's going to be happening and recording, that we will find out about this stuff, but we don't. We don't find out about the things that are really important to the viewer. It's not just anger.
See, and me, I've loved the journey that it's taken so far.
Like,
yes,
that's the thing.
Some stuff has taken a little bit too long, and they focused on some things where they could have focused on others. But I'm enjoying the journey enough that stuff doesn't really bother me at all.
And then
I'm
they'll
really
have
liking what's happening.
The other thing it suffers too is like Attack on Titan. Then some random character will get like a flashback. I'm like, I don't care enough about you to get a fucking flashback. Go back to this character. I don't care about you. You can die now. Like, go back to this one.
It also has one of the most powerful scenes in an anime you've seen this season.
I can say it does on episode 8. It's probably one of the most powerful scenes I've seen throughout that whole anime. Probably this season even. Really powerful scene. I'd like to talk about it, but obviously not here because I don't want to spoil it. So it does have moments. Like, it is beautiful. The music's great. It does have things like that. But I think overall it's just taking too much of our time and jerking you around. From my perspective. I've talked to other people. Everyone has their own opinion. A lot of people agree with me. Some people agree with Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, it's like at a 7.5.
It's to each their own. That's why we debated this, because obviously we had different views of what our 10s were.
7.5, I think, around there on MAL. So I mean, everybody's at least saying that it's worth attention.
It's in the sense, like, again, it's like Attack on Titan. It's entertaining, but it's probably not what you're thinking you're going to get when you go into it. But anywho,
that, you know what, I will say that's fair. It's fair that what happens in the first episode is not.
It's misleading.
I don't think it flat out is lying or anything like that. It's definitely making you kind of drop your guard before, like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
And
it gets intense quickly, and you're like,
the thing is,
whoa.
I feel like that's done purposefully, whereas I think with you think that it's more like they just dropped the ball and they weren't sure what they were doing.
Again, I'll have to make a video one day about, like, how I can explain this to people, but, like, there's a way anime should set themselves up to be like, this is what we intend to do, what we will likely do, therefore you can expect it. I'll have to find good examples and put a video together, because a lot of people have asked me about what I was talking about, but maybe I'm just crazy. Secretly, I'm just insane. Kidding.
I think it's just a matter of...
I think it's just
you want there to be a plan set in motion, and when you feel like things aren't being done properly,
thing, though,
it just kind of hits you on a weird note.
I guess maybe, because it's like certain shows where it's like, things can surprise me, and I'm totally okay with that. Like, Jeff knows my favorite types of books are mystery, ironically. Like, my favorite books to read are Sherlock Holmes. I've probably read all of them.
See, but those are all very formulaic, though.
But that's the thing.
They follow
it's
a
like,
formula.
It still makes somewhat of a promise, but it's enough of a promise to make me intrigued and to follow along, even if it's not anything that I've experienced with the books. But I will think of a video. I'll put it together. I'll make you happy.
And I mean, and I will say, thankfully, like, this isn't one of those anime where it's like 60 episodes and you still, like, you haven't gotten any resolutions.
Right.
It's going to be 12 episodes by the end of the year, and then that's it for that season. So it's not going to be a huge time sink if you're like, I don't know, like, 12 episodes, you can knock that off in an afternoon if you really wanted to. Well, in a day. Probably not in an afternoon. But.
Yeah. Depends on your day. Okay, let's get into the meat of it. Number 10 is...
Number 10.
Inuyashiki. And this was one, again, that we debated on if it deserved to be on the number 10 list because... Top 10 list. Because it also had issues, but overall, once we spoke about it, it seemed like it had more things going for it than things that it did wrong.
Peaks and valleys.
Definitely.
Peaks and valleys.
I think if they'd been given enough time to thoroughly think about what they wanted to achieve and to get the animation right, I feel like it could have really hit home this season.
It feels to me like we were watching the latest episode recently.
Don't spoil anything.
No, I know. Where, let's just say, things have progressed to the point where they were inevitably going to. Mm-hmm. And the whole time I said, why didn't this happen 3 episodes ago? Right. And that's probably more just to do with the nature of producing anime, where they were probably told, like, yeah, you can do an anime of this. It's got to be 12 episodes.
Well, we don't know the story behind it.
But I mean, it feels like it would have been a perfect, like, so Fooly Cooly is 6 episodes.
I can't remember anymore.
Yeah, it's somewhere around like 6 or 7 episodes, and that was just as much as they needed to tell their story. Mm-hmm. This felt like you could have done it with 9, and it felt like there was a lot of filler. It felt like there was a lot of stuff that was just totally out of place in a series that is named after a person. They spend more time looking at somebody else and everything about them, and that was just boring. It was confusing, but the premise of the show is fantastic. Some of the acting is especially good, which lots of people are mad because they hired actual actors instead of voice actors.
Yeah, people were miffed about that.
Which I'm like, whatever. I mean,
I feel like
a good actor is a good
act,
actor.
Yeah, if you can act and I can't tell, fine. I don't care.
Yeah.
If you just called it in, well, that's a different story. But I found, especially with Inuyashiki, obviously we said right away the opener, and everybody and their dog thought the opener was amazing, and it was. But the thing I think that stuck with me and made me want to put it in the top 10 is the fact that it had so many moments where it hit spot on where how society is. Where it can be really ugly, it can be really pleasant, it can be really confusing. And the fact of, like, especially the first 3 episodes, like, are ingrained in my mind for how intense they are. And I can't think of very many anime that right away hit that intensity without being labeled as gore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just going to say that. Because obviously there is killing in the show. That's all I'm going to say.
Was it episode 4 or 5 where it started? We were like, whoa, this is totally different.
We won't get into that, but it gets pretty dark in the sense of that. But I don't want to spoil anything for you. The CG, like we said, at times was really good, and other times it was sketchy. Like the last episode, it was bad. You could see where it should have been overlaid properly.
It felt like
it wasn't.
They needed another
They
week
needed
or two.
another. They needed more time.
Polish because it was not very good.
But it also looks at, which I think it does well. It's something that's been discussed many times, is the idea of power. What would you do if you had a ton of power? Would you do the right thing or would you do the wrong thing? And we've heard the story many times before, but yet...
Superheroes and supervillains.
But yet, even this time, somehow this felt fresh.
Yeah.
And it was a different aspect. And you get... I think in anime we don't see that very much, is that we have an older character, and we kind of see their perspective on life and their perspective of how people treat them, which I think is an important thing to focus on.
Especially, like, you know, Japanese culture on a whole is seen from the outside
Excuse me.
as more so than other cultures where they're actually, you know, respectful of their elders and that they're taking care of them, and they have an exceptionally aged demographic there. So just from a historical context, it's interesting to kind of look at, like, this is how you know, it's portrayed to, like, the rest of the world, but that maybe isn't how it's really happening in Japan. I don't know. I'm no Japanese major in history. Or
I'm not going to speak culturally. I just mean even in general, just elders and looking at it from their perspective and how society treats them and what it's like in the family dynamic of having kids when you're older.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. I won't talk very much about it anymore because I think what we need to say was said. It's really good, very powerful.
Just be prepared for it being exceptionally good one episode, and the next you're kind of like, huh.
Yeah, some episodes don't hit as hard, but I feel like all of it has a purpose, especially with having our time with the antagonist. We see a lot of, from their perspective, not just of somebody who's bad, but somebody who's mentally unwell, which I think is also important. But
it's interesting to phrase it that way when you kind of know
what's going to happen. But
what's happening.
That's what I was like. We won't say anymore. So let's move on to our number 9. What is it, Jeff?
Number 9 on our list is Recovery of an MMO Junkie.
Yeah.
I as I was writing out notes, I write some notes. I wrote down that it makes me feel the same way that a really good rom-com makes me feel.
That's fine. That's still...
and that there's nothing wrong with that.
And
a really good
romantic
rom-com
comedy.
like hits you. It makes you feel good in the end. You laugh, you cry. You're
yeah.
Like, yay! I'm glad things are progressing this way.
Yeah, and you know the art's pretty, the music's pretty. I find that the story doesn't use the MMO as a crutch.
No.
It uses it kind of as an integrated dynamic into a person's real life and actually looking at how it's changed how we interact with others, both online and in the real world.
It's very realistic to kind of how you can gain friends and relationships.
Like I texted
online.
My friend right away. That's the one we call Angry Red Panda. She is very much into MMOs and she's made lots of friends through it and she's met up with them and they're close. And I instantly thought of her watching this because she reminded me so much of our main character. And I thought it was really delightful to watch. And I think a sign for me personally, everyone's different, of what a good anime is for the year or season, is I can't stop watching the episodes. Even Jeff was guilty of like, okay, well, let's go to the next one. Let's go to the next one. Because we watched it at separate times and I wanted to see how he'd react. And again, both of us were just like, yep, let's keep going. And it was non-stop watching.
You know what? It started off slow for me. And where I would say the first couple of episodes, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, you're like, I don't know. It seems pretty basic, and you're like, it seems. I was like, no, just hang on. And
like, so obviously you could tell from the title, "Recovery of an MMO Junkie," that an MMORPG is a big part of it, and the earlier episodes revolves a lot more around the online MMO presence as opposed, and there's nothing, and I will say that this is something that it's a bit of a negative on it. There's nothing inherently overly interesting or unique or anything about the MMO. Now, that works in its favor later, but at the start, when it's so focused on that, it feels like a slog, where you're like, okay, where's the point? Where are we getting? And then by about episode 4 or 5, I was like, oh, okay, good.
And it's not to say it doesn't get good till episode 4 or 5. It's just the fact by 4, you understand exactly where the show's going.
Yeah, the real in the beginning, world implications.
Yeah. Because initially when you're watching it, I'm sure you'd probably feel the same way I did. When you start watching it, you get MMO fatigue. You're like, okay, we're in an MMO. We're going to do all this crap.
When are they going to get stuck in the MMO?
Yeah, when are they going to get stuck there? When are they, all this stuff. And it's like, who's going to be in a coma? But no, none of that stuff happens. And that's, I think, why you get the initial fatigue. Because even in the first episode, Jeff laughed pretty hard for some of the, like, they hit dead on for some of the stuff that's like MMO and stuff you see all the time, but you never think about it till it's put to paper.
And our main character is probably the most adorable human being in any season this year. Like, she's an absolute delight.
Yeah.
And, you know, somebody who takes pride in being a NEET, that's kind of a unique sort of protagonist to have. And just the surrounding characters are also done really well. And you've got, you know, they're all tropes of one kind or another. You've got somebody who's playing just to, you know, escape life. You've got other ones who are playing because, like, wow, like, I'm really stressed out and this is my stress reliever. Other ones who are just like, oh, isn't this pretty? Like,
that's the thing.
Wandering around.
I didn't want it to. I was worried it would speak down to its audience, where like, oh, all of these people on MMOs are like neets and otakus and losers and
they don't have a life.
And I was like, oh, great, because I thought this is what it's going to be. But no, it did it really well. Where it's like, these are people that, you know, have really stressful jobs, and this is their away time. We have people who have anxiety. This is their away time as well. We have people that are just waiting in between classes and doing stuff with their friends. You know, it's just kind of the whole spectrum of people that are on an MMO.
Yeah. And that's what MMO life is like for anybody who's ever played. I played WoW for like 3 years or so, and I met everybody.
Oh my God, Jeff, I have to tell this joke because everyone's probably going to laugh about it. But when Jeff was first watching it, he's just like, well, I don't know. And he's like, maybe we'll see. And I said, Jeff, Christopher Sabat's voice is in this. You know, he signed on to this for a reason. And Jeff's always just like, for a paycheck. I was like, no, he believes in this show. And I just started laughing. I was like, it's Christopher Sabat approved.
For anybody who hasn't watched Sugar's list on the top 10 voice actors in anime, there's probably a big hint as to who's really high on that list. No, but I mean, Sabat usually doesn't, at this point in his career, he normally doesn't take something that's outwardly bad. But I don't look at the voice actor talent and be like, okay, Sabat's there, that means this is going to be good.
No, it's a running joke. Obviously, voice actor has really great roles and has some that are, you know, not as great, but it's always a joke that I have. I was like, Christopher Sabat's voice is in it, Jeff. We know that there's
quality. Yeah, it's not anything that's groundbreaking or amazing, but it provides you that comfort and enjoyment of a really good rom-com.
Yeah.
If you're somebody who normally doesn't enjoy a romantic comedy, I don't think this would be the anime for you. But,
well, that's what it's marked as, a gamer romantic comedy. So
yeah. So I mean, if that's not, there isn't anything in this that would be
other than those titles
that would overcome that. If you're not a big fan of that, so
those are basically the 3 main genres in it, and that's literally what it is. So
yeah, it's really good.
It's really good. So, we got 9. We have now 10.
No, 8. We're going up.
Wow, I am doing good early on. Okay,
let's talk more about Inuyashiki.
Let's go back to 10. No, 8. Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. And it's actually really funny because it slipped under my radar this year. And then everybody I talked to on the channel and on every basically avenue I have to speak to you guys were like, you should watch it. My kids loved it. I loved it. Everyone loved it. And I thought, well, I'll give it a chance. And I started watching it probably about a week or so ago. And I thought it was so pleasant. And My fear was that it's just going to be kind of moe, and it's just going to be that. And it surprisingly wasn't. The art was really pleasant. The characters were a lot of fun. I have a soft spot for dragons, so...
Like everybody does.
I don't know.
Everybody has to have a soft spot.
It's one of those things where, like, some people like unicorns, I like dragons. It's kind of one of those things.
We don't want it so fluffy I'm gonna die. It's so not
it's so
fluffy
fantasy.
It will kill me.
It'll be awesome. I find that the story isn't just about a dragon being a maid. It's about a story. It goes into deeper topics, actually, about the fact of what it means to have a family, what it means to have friends, and making those sacrifices to make them happy, learning about them enough to know the differences, and knowing that arguing doesn't mean the end of the world. It doesn't mean that you are mad at this person. It means that you know each other well enough to argue. You know each other well enough to get along this way. And I thought it was really pleasant, really fun. It squeezes in some scenes of fighting. I won't get into with who or what. And I think those are well done in the sense of drawing. They aren't super in-depth, nothing like Dragon Ball Z levels. But there are some scenes where there's fighting, and it's really well done, and it's funny. And I can honestly say it made me laugh, and when I wasn't feeling the greatest, I put it on and it made me really happy. And Jeff kind of snuck in for a couple episodes and saw, but he never watched the whole thing, so that's why I'm doing most of the talking here.
It looks really solid. It looks
I can honestly say
unique for like that genre, because when you first were telling me about it, I was like, oh, okay, so it's another one of these, and it's like, oh, okay, so it's a slice of life, and then she's like, oh, but wait, they're dragons. Wait,
dragons.
Okay, like dragonoid or full on? No, they're full on dragons, huh? Okay, it's like that sounds interesting, and then I'd look over and be like, ha! Yeah, there was lots of good comedy bits in it, and
And there's a lot of, I know we talked about lore and stuff, but this one was more applicable to most audiences, where the dragons are actual dragons from kind of mythology, a lot lot of them. Which, and they kind of joke about,
Quetzalcoatl is one of the characters, and that's
which I love. And it's just like, they don't understand a lot of human norms. They just understand they're bad because they've been screwed over in the past, sort of thing. And so they try to fit in with human society, and it's very funny and interesting to see them.
One of them is Sleipnir, right? And I believe that's like from Norse. So they basically are just grabbing dragon types from different sort of mythologies and running with it. Yeah, like
and then
I'm pretty
Fafnir.
Sure, yeah, Fafnir is also, I think, Norse, and Quetzalcoatl, I think, is like South American or something like that. So lots of different mixing of different things. And
I can't remember all the dragons.
You and I are a pretty big fan of when they did that. Rage of Bahamut did a similar sort of thing, and obviously a much more serious thing. But it's like,
so
okay,
it's not,
let's just throw all of this into a mixing pot.
And it's not one of those things where you have to know it. It's just kind of a little like laugh, wink sort of thing. Because it's like, there was one moment where Quetzalcoatl, she's like, I don't do that anymore, and they're like, oh, is that because this happened? She's like, shut up! Like, I don't want to talk about it again. And it's just
I want to talk about my past as a badass dragon.
Yeah, it's just like, is it because you were fooled by blank? And it's like, oh my god, shut up! Like, it's just funny, and I found it very enjoyable.
There's nothing harder in the world than making a very good comedy that isn't,
And that's the thing. Yes, I'm going to say flat out, it is for everyone, but at the same token, there is some fan service. But if you're okay with that, like, I find that it's very pleasant for a lot of people and very cutesy. And
even Avatar: The Last Airbender had an episode or two that were mostly more fan service than they were, pushing ahead the plot or anything like that. So, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I love the American Pie movies. There's a lot of fan service in those too. Like, it just, sometimes comedy comes out of that sort of stuff. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Definitely enjoyable. So I think easily we can go into our number 7, which goes into our dragon trope.
Yes, a little bit. Yeah.
So number 7 is Restaurant to Another World. And I think based on our prior videos, it's no surprise for many of you. Restaurant to Another World was gorgeous. Had really intriguing characters. It was more for enjoyment rather than like being concerned about a thorough story. It was about creating this environment that was well lived in, having characters that are really gorgeous by design, by just voices, like everybody who's... I was just thinking, like, again, Christopher Sabat lent his voice again. Really great voices in it. I found the world very intriguing. It's intermingled with this portal fantasy, and it's really, really enjoyable. Like, if you just need something that's super chill, peaceful, food-related, this is it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's really unique in the sense that almost every single episode is its own kind of... It's its own unique little story that's contained within it. But at the same point, like, I would have loved, for most of them, I would have loved to even have heard more.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the point of the anime. And the anime, I don't think, is going to go that way moving forward, even if they do have a second season or something like that. But the fact that they can episodically still create many little stories that I care so much about each one of those, that just kind of shows the kind of quality we're talking about. And as opposed to something like Food Wars, which, Food Wars is all about showing how orgasmically good food can be. And I'm not going to disagree with that statement. Sometimes you eat something that is so good, it's better than sex. Like, that's totally, I get it, 100%. This one is more about showing how people are brought together via food.
Yeah.
When we go to other nations, one of the very first things that we ever do is like, I want to try local cuisine. I want to see what food is like here. And there's a reason why when we're first talking to somebody about, let's say, food, it's like, well, what kind of food do you like? We don't normally just oh, I like a steak. Be like, oh, you know what? I like Italian. I like Japanese style food. I like this or that. And the anime really does a good job of just kind of showing that beyond all the divides and cultures and countries and whatnot, food is something that can bring us together. And there's lots of scenes within the series where we see a couple of characters in the background who we know, based on who they are, like, they would probably actually fight, and they would be brought to combat due to the little snippets of the story we get about their past. But they come here, they come to the restaurant, and they can't fight because they'll get kicked out, and then they bond over food. And I'm like, that's us. That's human beings. It uses fantasy as a way to show that. It's really good.
It's like, if you like watching the Food Channel, just imagine that was fantasy, and this will be like home for you.
The Lizard Man
Jeff
for
loves
the win.
The Lizard
Man.
Man.
The dragons.
I love the Fairy Queen.
She's
hot to trot.
And I mean, again, it's another one where there's a little bit of, I guess you could call it fan service. But at the same point,
you see half-naked dragon in the beginning.
If you're gonna draw fairies, like, they gotta look like fairies. If you're gonna have dragons who don't understand the norms of human beings, they're probably not gonna understand why you gotta wear clothes.
They understand. They're just like, why bother?
Yeah.
This is like, that's your problem.
That's your hang-up.
That seems like a you problem, yeah.
But yeah, it's just, again, it's nothing that's going to make you think more deeply about anime. It's not going to move the genre ahead. It's more just about taking what's enjoyable about the style of anime, sharpening it to a point, and being like, here you go. Enjoy.
There you go. Yeah, it's great. I think you'd really, really enjoy it if you like kind of the slice of life, just calmness, and we have our stories, and each one of them is very interesting, and it's not all there is to it, a story, but we get snippets and we start to understand how each of these people are intermingled and unknowingly connected to one another, which I think is very beautiful in its own way. So, yeah, so now on to number 6, I would say.
Yep.
Natsume's Book of Friends, Season 6. Yes, it's another season.
After, I believe, Season 5 might not have made your top 10 last year.
No way. No.
We would have made your top 10 most disappointing anime of the year.
Wow. I made a video of how I was disappointed.
Yeah, but it seems like they've definitely
they've picked
come
up,
back.
Yes. I think they realized what they did wrong, and they wanted to rectify it. The artwork was so beautiful. The music was on point. Everything was just really well done. It decided to do the opposite of what it had done last season and stick more heavily to the chapters, which was very, very good. And I'm glad they didn't go over expansive and trying to fill stuff that wasn't necessary. I found this season was very much about going into some of the background of the characters that have already been established. We get a little more information on Reiko. We get some more information on some of our secondary friends. And again, it's just a good time. Some episodes made me cry. Some of them are really heartwarming. I just find it's a really good mix.
The good thing about it, so I haven't watched Natsume in its entirety as Sugar has.
He's just walked in and
I was never as enamored with it as she was. And the big problem I had, because I've watched like the first 2 seasons, was that I don't mind slice of life, but then when they give you that little snippet of like, no, there's an overarching thing that's happening here, and then they don't touch it for almost a complete season.
Yeah, it's
that bothered me. It's too much of a slow burn, but it definitely seems like with this season they're like, okay, we get you. We know
we're giving you bits.
We know that it's important that we move ahead the actual story. So even if the plot lines with the main antagonists aren't necessarily moved forward, we learn about a lot of the other characters and what they went through and how that has influenced the current situation that Natsume finds himself in. So that's important. It's something that really needed to happen, and I'm very glad that it did this season.
Yeah, I find that the thread of a story that's happening is very loose. It's very, I would say for most episodes, very episodic. We do get some story. We start to understand our characters a little more this season. But I find that's not enough for some viewers. Like, they need to have that story where it is more for enjoyment and just that episodic feel of sometimes life is sad. Sometimes it's really good. Sometimes it's just about being with friends. It's about all these things.
See, and I mean, and so, like, some people will know that I view Cowboy Bebop as one of, like, the top 5 greatest anime of all time. And that also was very episodic. At the same point, what's happening here where I feel like
6 seasons.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that Cowboy Bebop, it's all contained within, 24 to 26 episodes, and it seems like every 5 episodes they kind of loop back to, like, oh, this is what Spike's past was like before. Here's a character from Spike's past. That's how it influenced him to get to this point. And so, being episodic, not only is it's not bad, it can be fantastic because you can just kind of jump in and get an idea of what a series is like without having to have started right from the beginning. You just need that thread pulling you along a little bit more than Natsume did at times. But yeah, season 6, it seems like they were like, okay, we know how to do this.
And if any of you are unsure, it's a lot like Mushishi, very episodic. There is a bit of a story happening. Mushishi, I'd say, is even more episodic. But Natsume's Book of Friends is much lighter. It's not as dark. But you're still dealing with yokai. You're still dealing with all that stuff. And I find it's very pleasant, so...
Well, it's pleasant when it's not making you cry.
Well, it's pleasant in the sense that it's an emotional experience where you don't always have happy days. You have some sad, you have some really heartwarming, you have ones with friends, you have ones that are almost like horror stories, you have ones that are really interesting, and it's just like a mixed bag. But I feel like no matter what, it's good, because like even in this season, the episode that made me cry was one about basically the premise of being forgotten, and of course that makes you sad. Why wouldn't it? But I find that's a very appropriate subject to talk about, and yeah.
Yeah, because we're both teachers, and we know a lot of the reason why children will act out is because they want attention. They don't feel like they're being noticed. Like, it's a human thing. It's odd that sometimes it takes shows that are about monsters and yokai and ghosts and stuff like that to hit on core human elements. But I mean, that's being forgotten, being not thought of is worse than being thought of as a jackass.
Sometimes. But that's all I want to say about it. I don't want to ruin anything. So again, beautiful, great.
Basically, as long as it isn't season 5, Natsume has been a stellar.
Yeah, that's the only season that kind of disappointed me. I'd say the strongest from what I remember, is season 2 and 3. I can go into why later, but not this video. But yeah. Anywho, number 5. we're gonna get into a lot more talking.
yeah, for sure. As they get higher up, they're more worthy of spending time on.
There's lots of things about them that are like, whoa. Okay, number 5, Girls' Last Tour. I think the season...
We made a video about it.
We made a video about it. We made a whole podcast. It wasn't
getting as much attention as it should.
A podcast about why it deserved a better score than it had. It's gone up a bit, I think, since we've done the video, but still in that range. I know for some people they won't understand it. I don't mean that in a demeaning way, but I mean in the sense of what it hopes to accomplish, because at a very visual level, it looks very moe. But it's not at all what it is. And they're like, oh, it's a good vibe sort of thing. And for the majority of the time, it's not. It's very much a very philosophical show about simple concepts, but that are just as poignant when said in a certain way. We have subjects that are covered, like about God and, excuse me, and helplessness and isolation and being alone in the dark, and why those things are terrifying for us and why they're so contentious, and looking at history, why it's important, why books are important, why writing's important. It's a very simple show, it's very muted, and yet it accomplishes so much.
Yeah, it's... Like I wrote down here in my notes that I said, I never thought that I would find something that hits that perfect balance of depth and simplicity like Calvin and Hobbes does, but this just came out of nowhere, and it like hit me with that, where it's depressing joy almost, like it examines. I think the
best example of that is the airplane episode.
Oh yeah,
where you have that moment of sheer helplessness, and I literally cried, followed by optimism, which is such a weird roller coaster.
Like you said, like every episode hits on some like really complex ideas. We're talking war, culture, religious thoughts, dreams, war, combat, what all of it means. The thing I like the best is that the show doesn't really present an answer. It's never been about like this is how I feel about this from the creator. It was more like wanting to make you start to question it yourself.
Yeah, and that's the thing I like. It never promises to give you answers, and it's not judgy. It's not giving you the answers like, this is the right religion, this is the right thing to think. It's just saying, why has religion become this thing? Why has it become something that people fight over? Why couldn't they see their differences before it led to war? Like, what are these? Like, they pose these questions and they explore them, like, well, maybe this is what caused it. Maybe this is what caused it. And it kind of goes through some of these things. And through the girls kind of exploring this area that's very barren, they kind of come to understand that maybe this is the reason, but not the answer. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's very deep, and yet so... It's such an odd concept. It's so deep, yet so plain. And that's such a weird thing. It's like two girls, and we haven't really gone into much detail about the other shows because I think they've been talked about a ton, but... it's just like this barren waste field of land that's like Earth, that has different levels, and they're just trying to get to the highest level to try and figure out where they are on the world and who's left and what they can find and what it means, really, and what that means for their survival. And it's very, very good. And we have two characters that are very much yin and yang, and it also makes the questions more poignant because then it has two perspectives that aren't the same. Where one person will think optimistically, like Chef, and pessimistically, like myself. And that really gives you different answers instead of a clear-cut, this is why. It's, well, this is how I would feel if I was there. Well, maybe that's what started this. Or this is when I felt the most helpless. But it's like, well, I think you could feel more helpless. And it's like, holy crap.
I don't think that any reviewer, us included, can really serve it justice. It's one of those things you kind of have to watch for yourself. And you know what? It won't be for everybody.
No.
100%. There's going to be some people out there who are like, okay, this is boring. I don't get it. It's slow-paced. Nothing is really happening. There's probably not going to be any sort of conclusion. It's just going to be like, oh, okay, we're done with their stories for now.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's going to be a second season. It doesn't really matter to me. I would love more introspection and looking at things, but for the time being, like, if this is all we ever get, I am just so glad that it exists and that we got to watch it. And I love the stark contrast between like the cute character animations and then the cold, like,
The cold reality.
Like, what industrialism will look like in 1,000 years. That's what it is. It's these, it's humanity against industrialism. Like, it's
when will it be enough for us to be satisfied, sort of thing. Yeah. And we see that apparently no one was ever satisfied.
Yep.
And then it goes back to square one of simple things creating satisfaction. And I find it's very, very, very interesting. It's almost like...
Every single episode, we've kind of looked at each other and we were like, wow, like that was deep.
Like, yeah, I remember
there's... every episode, we're just like, wow, that's our response.
Yeah. And I remember the one thing, it doesn't give anything away, where I remember them sitting there, it's just the two girls. And there's this large, like, panning out shot of the environment, which was super beautiful. And she's just like, well, we're alone. And she's like, well, if I died, you'd be more alone. And it's just like, oh, this is like, oh my God. It's just like the way of viewing things. And it was very, very touching. So I don't think we can say anymore. I don't know if we should say anymore. We'll leave that up to you. Hopefully you get to it. If not,
we get sorry. It, but that's bad on you.
No, not bad on you. It's a choice. Number 4 is Descending Stories. Excuse my language here. I'm going to try and pronounce it. Shouwa, Genroku, Rakugo, Shinjuu. And that's our show. It's the 2nd season. Thank you. I don't think I did it very well or give it justice. The 2nd season of the show it's about, how can I explain it? It's about a simple story about how these characters have fallen into the career of Rakugo. And like some of them had chosen it, some of it had just happened due to circumstance. And if you really like Memoirs of a Geisha, either the book or the movie, the book obviously I liked more, it's very much like that, where it's a snippet of time where we get to see these people, how Rakugo was successful, how history changed it, how war changed it. And it's just a very beautiful, like, animation, beautiful story, the way it's told. They have really great voice actors doing these roles, which really helps with the Rakugo. Like, if you don't know what it is, it's basically like storytelling where one person sits in front on a stage and does all the characters themselves to tell a story. And it's very, very intriguing. I didn't think, honestly, the 2nd season could be as good as the 1st, but yet somehow it's better, in my opinion. I think I love the whole historical aspect. It's working through life, working through guilt, what a family can look like. Obviously, I'm sure no surprise anybody's watched it, I cried at the end. It really looks at the effects of choices, and it's very hard-hitting, and it's very simple and sweet, and very much about life, and it was great. I can't think of a negative thing to say about it, honestly.
Might be too heavy for some people.
It would be too heavy for some people, and some people couldn't stand to listen to somebody just talk, Or I'm very much, obviously maybe it's the historical part of me that, like, people who do storytelling intrigues me, especially those who can captivate you. Like, I think some people are just I shouldn't say God-given, but, like, just natural talent to tell stories.
Yeah, like natural orators.
I can't remember his name for the life of me. I should have looked it up before we talked. But he is a game developer, and he looks like, what the heck's his name? Anyways, I can't think of it. I'll write it in the notes later if I think of it. He is a game designer, and he's just like the most charismatic person, and listening to him talk, I could listen to him talk for hours about just bullshit. He is such a good storyteller. I think he was at E3 this year, and they were talking about games. I think it was that Viking one. Him.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name for the life of me. Very sorry. Very, like, just talented storyteller. Like,
the game is called For Honor, but we'll say
the fellow behind it. Yeah.
Actually,
he can look it up on talking. But I think that some people just have that innate ability to captivate people's attention. It's not even in the sense of acting, in the sense of using your voice and portraying it and, like, projecting your voice. I think that's just so great. And I think it's a very simple story at appearance, first looking at it, but I think it's so deep, and it's very heart-wrenching, and it's hard to kind of come to terms with choices that you've made. And our characters are very relatable, about kind of being too stubborn and kind of being set in your own ways and wanting things to be a certain way, and just
Jason Vandenberg.
Thank you. And somebody who's just great at telling stories, and I could listen to him talk all day. But some people can't do that. Some people can't captivate people's attention, and I find that's a very interesting trait to have, and the show goes into that. And I love the characters, I love the story, I loved how things went. There were a couple of things, all I'll say is a Shinigami scene I wasn't a huge fan of. That's all I'm going to say. The ending was really good. It made me sad, obviously. Yeah. The opener is very interesting, kind of reminds me of like I don't know how to say it other than like a sexy cafe. It's kind of like that, I don't know how to say it, like a lusty voice singing the main opener with like a smooth jazz over it, you know? Mm-hmm. I really like that. Yeah, I liked it. I don't know what else to say. I liked it. I can't think of anything really bad to say about it other than the Shinigami scene, other than that.
The fact that it makes number 4 when...
This is a tough year.
the top 3 are probably all 10s when everything is said and done.
When everything's said and done.
Shouwa making it up to 4 is, really good.
Yeah.
And I mean, like I said, for some people it will be too heavy, it will be too dramatic, it's not that escapism you're looking for, it's a very human story, it's a very, soul-crushing at times, because you know what, sometimes life is soul-crushing.
And if you've watched the first season, the second season clarifies, I don't want to give anything away, it gives more clarity to situations, which makes more sense, which makes things even more sad.
And I mean, and you know what? That's actually a testament to something like, when you're talking about oral history, for example, it's not always told the same way.
And that's the thing I think I really love, and that's where the truth comes from, because the first part of the season, I shouldn't say the first part, the first season is from one of our characters' perspectives, and then the second season, he said, well, didn't you know this is what happened from their perspective? And then you get the full story of what actually happened, and you're like, oh, like, it made me so incredibly sad. And I was just like, shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a commentary on, like, lots of different things beyond, the actual story that it's telling. It's kind of a meta-commentary on what, like, storytelling is only from our own perspective. And
that's a lot of history,
from our own perspective. And so it's a bit of a meta-commentary on storytelling as an art form, being an orator, what that means, and stuff like that.
And then there's things
I don't
that
know if that was necessarily their intention that they had, but I mean, whether that was the intention or not.
It was intention in the sense of making the story fit the situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what this first season was about a story fitting a situation. I won't say what, because I don't want to ruin anything. Then the second season is about somebody being at that situation and telling the total story.
Yeah. Not
one that made to fit someone else's perspective of them, but the entirety of the story.
It'd be like hearing about the Second World War from a British soldier perspective, and then a German soldier coming in and be like, that's that side. Here's filling in the rest of the blanks.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's number 4, and like I said, number 3, 2, and 1. When everything is said and done, 2 of them I put as a 10, and the other one, if it continues going on, is a 10. So
this is how
do you jumble 3 10 out of 10s?
Yeah, like 3.
Tough.
I'd never done this before, so it's testament to the show. Is the Ancient Magus' Bride? I've never scored an anime ongoing, and I theoretically doesn't have one now because I haven't put it on my anime list, but.
I can't imagine you not giving it a 10. Like, it'd have to shit the bed real hard.
It would have to really badly. Like, it's everything I would want in something that's fantasy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I love Harry Potter. So does Jeff. And to find something so like it, yet so different, is appeasing to me.
Like, let's be clear right here. Little Witch Academia is Harry Potter.
Yeah, it's basically a carbon copy with girls, and there you go. But this is different.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Because lots of people are going to be like, Where's Little Witch Academia?
And
we decided not to watch it because we've watched Harry Potter and we have other things to watch.
We watched the movie in the first set that we had on Netflix, and we thought, okay, it's nothing no offense, it's nothing special, it's Harry Potter. And, we will watch it because it's pleasant and we like Harry Potter. But The Ancient Magus' Bride, and not to promote somebody else's video, but Gigak did a video about the fantasy that is The Ancient Magus' Bride, and I think he nails it spot on for a lot of things, where it's not just a world and that's all it is. You're put in the same position as Chise, our main character, who's a girl, and you get to explore it, and you get to understand what the role is of other people in this world, what these creatures are, like, what your purpose is. Like, we don't fully understand yet, but we're getting to it. Like, we kind of understand our abilities a bit more now. Like, all these characters have personalities and really awesome, like, it's just great. Like, it's hard to put into words. It's just so good. And
it's the kind of world building that it's the kind of world building that you don't see all the time anymore, because so many anime and so many just works.
And the manga is beautiful as well. Like, it's the manga's credit that they put so much detail and time into these things, and things they thought about heavily. Like Chise, I mentioned in a video before, that I love that she's so plain. And I know Jeff's like, she's not that plain, but I'm like, compared to other anime, like, they would give her the cutesiest look ever to make her appealing to everybody.
I was going to say, green-eyed redhead. That doesn't happen too often.
No, I just mean, like, if you made her black and white, she would look pretty plain. And I like that, because it makes it more relatable to the audience. It's not this pretty girl who got everything going in life and got the best hand given to her. It's somebody who had a shit hand. And you know what? They're making the best of it, and she's really pleasant. She has a great personality. She's super cute herself. Her dynamic with Ruth, and people say Elias or Elias, depends who you talk to, but I say Elias because I knew a guy with the same name.
I know a wrestler with the same name.
Everyone's different. Doesn't really matter. But, like, their dynamics between one another are really cute and sweet, and I like that they kind of, at times when things are really funny, kind of go in between, like, a cartoony, like, chibi kind of thing. But not to, like, the point where it's, like, nauseating chibi or anything like that. It's just kind of a device used to make things a little more funny and exemplify that these people actually have humor. They're not just walking, talking like people. They actually have feelings and personalities and thoughts and goals, and it's really, 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 really good.
The thing that I give it credit for, and Harry Potter does the same thing, but here it's made a little bit more explicit, which I like. And you can do that because being able to animate something it's much easier to kind of showcase magic as opposed to live action. And that is showing both the awe and the terror that is involved in magic.
Yeah.
They have not shied away from the horrible atrocities that can and will be done in the pursuit of magical power.
Yes.
And that is wonderful. And that's one of the things, and I'm pretty sure I've said this before, but one of the things that is really important to me when it comes to anime is using the fact that this is animation in a way that bolsters the storytelling, the world building, and everything around it. Mm-hmm. And when you're talking about magic, there's only so much that you can do in live action. Mm-hmm. Harry Potter, it does magic okay, but I never really felt like it captured the awe of what magic can do. Like one of the scenes that did it for me was they walked into that tiny little tent, and then it's like a house inside, and I'm like, that's really cool. Like, that's awe-inspiring. But here they use animation in such a way, and it's beautifully animated. They spend so much time to make it look like every episode looks like it's movie quality. Yeah. And you don't see that.
If I just walked into a room and be like, what movie are you watching? Because not that amount of detail doesn't go into very many anime. Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's just, I'm trying to think,
gorgeous.
like it's Clanad levels. For those who don't know, Clanad are the ones who do stuff like, what am I thinking of here?
I'm thinking of the anime.
Cardcaptor. Clanad is the studio as well.
I see what you mean. I was like, what?
Like, if anybody out there who watched the one episode special that they did, like, it's just so much attention and effort is put into every everything that they did.
Yeah.
And Ancient Magus' Bride does the exact same thing. And using that not only to show the beauty of magic and this world, but also the horror that's involved is really powerful. They have a lot of secondary characters, but each one is really fleshed out pretty well. Or they're, if not well, they're fleshed out enough where you understand their place in the world. Like some of the characters, they literally just show up and it's like, oh, they're obsessed with Chisei, and then you just hear like, this is the reason why. Because you are who you are and you are what you are, they are obsessed with you. Mm-hmm. And that's just their nature. That's the kind of creature they are. Mm-hmm. And it's really cool that they spend so much time talking about and doing all that world building, because it is important. Just like it was in Harry Potter. It was important to spend all that time to showcase, like, this is the Muggle world, this is the humans. They do stuff where they show, like, this is how we hide ourselves from humans. Certain humans do know that we exist. We work together with them. They kind of hide our presence a little bit. But then it also goes into the fact that, yeah, humans used to know about us a long, long time ago, which is why we are written in storybooks, in fairy tales. That's why they exist, is because we actually exist. But they've forgotten now, Like, they spend all of that time, and they do it in a relatively quick time. We're only, 11 or 12 episodes in right now, and all of that has already happened. They understand that this is important, and it's important for us to take that time to do it, and it has just made everything so much better.
Yeah.
It's so good.
And even the last episode, I can say, like, it knows that it can't just rush things. Mm-hmm. And, like, one of the characters, I won't say who, we have a moment where they get injured, and I feel genuinely sorry for them, because even though we've had such little time with this person, it was established in such a way that you know that they're important. Mm-hmm. And it's done in such a way that you're like, okay, I should care about this person. And you do.
Yeah.
Because of what they've done. And in that short amount of time of that information you've been given, it does such good work of every tool that it has. It's like, okay, we have exactly, this is the next place we want to hit. We need to make these connections in that time. We need to make sure the audience feels like they're there, that they understand why this is important, why this needs to be done. And I think it's done in such a genuine way that it's so delightful.
Yeah,
and it's so great.
That's been the failure of other anime in the past. Yeah. I mean, I will say, just to go off on a tiny bit of a tangent, I have, in a small part, enjoyed Black Clover a little bit more in the past, like 3 or 4 episodes than I did at the start. But the big mistake they make is they introduce a million characters and you don't care about any of them.
Yeah.
And your main character is an asshat, and you don't like him, and he yells and screams, and you could use that and you could mm-hmm. play him off of a bunch of other really cool characters.
Yeah.
And through 12 episodes, they just don't take that time.
They don't care.
And here, in Ancient Magus' Bride, I would say we have just as many, if not more secondary characters.
More.
And we care about all of them more than we care about that asshole.
Like, God, I love Angie. And we've had her for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
And it's like, I love her. It's like, she's my new wife. No, I was kidding. But I love her. I love her design. I love her character. I love her personality. I love her familiars. It just, it works.
And another thing that I'll give Magus' Bride a lot of credit for is that the antagonists that we've met so far, they work perfectly within this world.
Yeah.
They're not somebody who's like, oh, I'm out for, I want to take over the world or something like that. They're just people who also exist in this world, who also see the benefits of Chisei, and they're like, I could do this.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't I do this? It's magic.
Don't get me wrong, there are dark characters in the show.
Oh, yeah, there's definitely...
But it's not like being evil for evil's sake. It's I have this reason, I got effed over, and I expect to be, compensated in a sense of karma, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's as much as I want to say about it.
Yeah, there isn't so far a Lord Voldemort, since we're using that, there isn't a Lord Voldemort
Nothing
kind of character.
That, yeah.
There's just there are these people who we like because they're being good to Chisei, and she's our protagonist and whatnot, and they're making a better life for her. And then there are these other people who are like, yeah, I mean, that's what they say. Is that really what's going on? I could do this instead. And it's so good. I know you don't... No spoilers. That wasn't spoiling anything. There are antagonists and protagonists, and they have differing opinions on things.
Oh, Jeff.
And then there's really good middle ground characters, too, who, like, again, they just exist. They're there. They have differing...
There's dragons in this one, too.
There are.
And it's
dragons
really
are awesome.
super enjoyable.
God. We gush so much, and that's only our number 3.
Yeah, I gosh. So, number 2 then is My Hero Academia Season 2.
And if you would have told me that this was only going to be number 2, like, the first 10 episodes in, I would have been like, no, you're shitting me. There's nothing that's going to be better.
Yeah, seeing as how ecstatic I was when it aired, I was just...
In terms of, and I mean, yes, it's the trendy thing to be like, oh, a shonen really high up on your list.
Original.
The only shonen I have above Season 2 of My Hero Academia is Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Yeah.
Which is largely considered to be, beyond maybe Hunter x Hunter, the best shonen that's ever been animated. Yeah. So, the fact that we have those so close together...
Just for the record, I am in love with everything about this series. I'm in love with the anime, I'm in love with the manga, I'm in love with everything about it. I am...
You don't have a reason not to.
I'm in love. I think it would have to, like, literally just do something terrible for me to be like,
I can
wow.
understand why some people are concerned about the most recent arc and something that they implement in the manga.
Oh, I thought you meant in the anime. I was like, what?
It's something that they implement here, but there's a reason this is becoming a worldwide phenomenon. There's a reason why everybody's talking about it, and that's because the quality of it is so fucking good.
I think the thing that makes it a win is, like, not even talking about the anime or the manga, it's the creator. He was a fan. He became a creator and had that ability to transform fandom into creation, and he understands what he would want to see as a fan. And I think that is a huge bonus for this kind of anime, because he gets it. He knows what he would like to see. He got a team together. He got these people together and said, okay, this is what I want to accomplish. And they all work together. Like, you couldn't be happier with the team he has and, like, people working with the anime. I heard the movie's coming out. I don't have all the details for that yet, so I don't want to say anything. But that's coming out soon, and I'm sure he'll be overseeing that as much as he can. But, like, so good. Characters, great. Art, great. Music, great. Voice acting, great. Like,
so
the upcoming arcs are going to be freaking amazing. Like, just FYI.
Beyond just saying that everything is great. Here's kind of the notes that I made.
Jeff's going to have to talk about it because I can't.
No, there's nothing I can really say.
Okay, so I was about to say, I can't.
First of all, in Season 2, they had the introduction of an antagonist who brings up legitimate problems within the hero world and is the perfect antithesis to the worldview that our heroes have. Like, it is wonderful to see very quickly them bring in this character who is like, this hero worship is really awful. It's creating a world that shouldn't work the way that it does, and here's why. And we've had this discussion on a previous podcast. You can go and watch that if you want, about how it's legitimate. The kind of things that this villain, this antagonist, is bringing up, a lot of the problems are very legitimate that he brings up. And that it works so well to counterbalance, essentially, Superman. Like, the worldviews of, like, you know, this sort of thing, which is awesome.
I think people underestimate the power of Stain, and they say, oh, he was such a small... Yeah, sorry, he's one of our, can I say, antagonists. He is, in a short amount of time, a lasting impression. And I think people are like, oh, he's not a very good antagonist, he's only there for a couple episodes, rah, 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 rah. But he's not our main villain. He is an idea that needs to be seeded and perpetuate the oncoming events. Because I know I said before I was going to make a video about it, but I just never got around to it. Then when I tried, the computer crashed, and long story short. Anywho.
Life happens.
Yeah, it happens. Very sorry. So don't think I forgot, because I didn't. Stain is an immense power. He's an immense idea, in a sense that he's like a religion. That once he's captured, it is put through the media, but not in a complex way. It's given in a media way, where it's very simple, and the message is this. And then all these people come out of the woodwork, which we see in this season, of the villains coming forth, and we see the implications of him just being Stain, on his message of what effect that has on the heroing world, and who comes forth thinking they're doing the right thing when in actuality they aren't. You get to see characters who decide to be the villain, and then yet at times feel like they themselves are doing the wrong thing and become partially a hero. I don't want to say things too deep because I don't want to give anything away. Later arcs, if there's anything Jeff isn't aware of because he's giving me a look, I can explain it later if you can remember.
No, I get it, yeah.
And I think his message, even to the latest arc, permeates. And I think people underestimate the power of what his character stood for. It's not just a sense of being somebody like on a Ninja Turtles episode where he's there and then he's gone a couple episodes later. He is a lasting idea. The idea of what a hero should be and what it means to be All Might.
Yes.
And we see the next two arcs are my personal favorite. I can't wait for it to be animated. Coming up this year. Excited. Anyways. Super, super stoked. I find that a lot of people, really, it hit home for a lot of people, the emotion in this anime. The fact that you don't have to be an incredible person to be a hero. You just have to have, I'm saying in the sense of Midoriya.
Yeah.
Like, he's not, no offense, not good looking. He's not strong. He's not all these things, and he shouldn't have been a hero, but he is. It's like All Might said, it's the fact of thinking like a hero, of having your feet move before you can realize that this might not be the best idea. And it's having that drive to want to save people and to push forward to what is expected and moving beyond like plus ultra. It's having that ability to think of others and to push yourself to those limits. And like the season was great animation, like we've seen it everywhere, the fight between Todoroki and Midoriya. Mm-hmm. It's balls to the wall, awesome.
Yeah.
It's great. Like the animation was on point, the characters I loved were there, like we had some more, like, even some more extended scenes. Like, we had the one episode where we got to see more of the internship. Wasn't necessarily in the manga, but it wasn't, like, fluff. It was really what happened, but it was kind of just mentioned in passing to get the story progression.
The fact that the creator of the manga is heavily invested in the anime, like, he basically just was like,
he wants to make sure
this is what would have happened.
Yeah.
I didn't put it in the manga.
Yeah.
We're going to put it in the anime instead.
Yeah, like, it was mentioned that all these things happened, but it was, like, very quick, Yeah. So it's kind of like, this is what happened, let's move on. But it had that ability to sit and you got to see what the internships were like for a lot of them. Some of them were underwhelming because we saw some of them that had to do commercials. Other ones did patrol. Other ones were like right in the mix. It was very much different for every person. And we also see that each person has different interests, which is incredibly important. The fact that being a hero doesn't mean that you have to be in the rubble digging people out. You have to be, or just fighting people. There's a wide expanse of things you can do. You can be promoting. You can be in the media. You can be in news. You can be like just anything you can think of that your power would help you to like better do. You can do it. Mm-hmm. You can be like search and rescue, like everything. Like we see Sue. She's out on the ocean because obviously that's her element. People love her. I've heard it a ton. People love Sue. I love Sue. But you see like where your quirk fits in best. And even if like we see some quirks were made to be more for a certain thing, you can do the opposite. Like Hitachi, we see he has an ability for mind control, and obviously people say that he'd be better off as a villain, but we see other people saying that he'd be better off as a hero. Still a character that's kind of at stalemate right now. I don't want to mention him. But just that idea of like, man, you'd be better as a villain. But it's not a fact of what you'd be better as, it's what you want to be.
Yeah.
You get a choice in that, and I think that's really important. And showing that each one is just as important as the next. Especially when we go through, you'll see later, the exam arcs of how each one of their abilities is very important to getting things done. Mm-hmm. But talking about this season, great. I can't badmouth it because there's nothing I hated. I loved all of it. I loved Gran Torino coming in, which was expected. It was in the manga. I read all of it, so it wasn't a surprise. Really great, though. I actually enjoyed his voice acting. trying to think. It's just like, yeah, it was great. I don't know. I liked when they went up against the teachers. It was great.
It takes everything that other shonen have done, and again, just hones it. Like, you know, having this school of gifted people and whatnot. Hey, Naruto did it, but you know what Naruto did? They forgot about every other character except for like the main three. That hasn't happened even by the manga standard. That hasn't happened yet. Tournament arcs, they happen all the time. And this is a great one. Lots of anime have had problems with creating really memorable antagonists that actually mean something to that world. And even something like, hey, I love Dragon Ball Z. Almost every single villain in that thing was a throwaway that was just like, I hate Goku, so I'm going to fight him. Or, you know, I only found out recently that the character of Frieza was supposed to be some sort of allegory towards, like, all these business moguls in Japan who were, like, buying up all of the available land or something like that because Frieza went around, took control of planets, and then resold them. Like, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. To me, Frieza just seemed like a jackass who wanted to rule the world, but apparently it was something a little bit deeper. Whereas here, yeah, like, every single villain that's come around there's been something to him that's been really, you know, in depth. It's been really good. So they take what has worked in other ones, and they're like, yeah, we can do this. And then they've seen what didn't work, and they're like, oh darn, like, we need to work on that. And that's part of the reason why I'm not very big on Black Clover, and that I'm only kind of lukewarm about Boruto is because My Hero Academia Season 2 was like, yeah, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood was like 7 or 8 years ago. It's about time another friggin' great shonen came around.
Yeah.
Not saying anything for Hunter x Hunter, which we are going through the English.
Yep.
There's been some great stuff in it. I felt like the Greed Island arc was... It was convoluted. It was weird. I can understand why people were like, oh, that was just him having played too much Dragon Quest and wanted to put that into his manga. Apparently he's weird in that respect, and just whatever catches his interest.
He's just...
he tosses it in.
Quirky.
But yeah, like, as good as some of the stuff from My Hero Academia, I mean, not My Hero, for as good as some of the stuff like Hunter x Hunter has been, My Hero Academia, to me, blows it out of the water completely.
And I think something that epitomizes a lot of the season was one of the episodes where the kids go up against the teachers. And I don't want to get into anything really, but there's one scene I want to talk about which I think really gets into the meat of how good this anime is. Momo, who is our creationist, is working along with Todoroki. And in the first season, we see that she's a very strong, capable woman who...
Exceptionally smart. She's, I think, the smartest in their class. She
was recommended on referral, like, she got into the program, didn't have to do the testing. And in the season, we see that when she's put into a larger pond with all these, like, big hitting, like, quirks and characters and personalities, that she starts to doubt herself. And we see that with the confrontation with Aizawa, that she is able to find herself again and not be lost. And I think that's a great kind of display for the show of how it can show that these characters aren't just one-dimensional, that they're incredibly strong and that's all they need to be. It's the fact that they have fears and worries, and the fact that they aren't measuring up, and what they can do to be better, and just working on yourself. And I think it's really, really, really great. And I think, again, another one I joke, Christopher Sabat's voice is all mine. But hey, but I think it's great. All the voice acting is really great. A lot of people I love do the voice acting in this. No Surprise was Funimation. Yeah, love it. Love everyone in it. Yeah.
It's number 2 on our
Jerry
list.
Jewell, Morgan Berry, tons of people in there.
If you're looking for something that's absolutely transformative, that is so unique and above everything else, like I said, I gave it a 10 this season because it is taking what a shonen can be and basically being the best of that. It won't be anything more than that, so if you go into it like expecting your mind to be blown by every single element,
it is so good. Do don't downplay.
No, I'm just saying is this going to be that thing that like changes your entire idea of what anime can be. I don't think it will. It's just the one that takes what has worked and
made it better.
Makes it excellent. I would still say Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is a little bit better, but we got the complete story of that already, and that is wonderful. But the very fact that I'm comparing it to Brotherhood should show you that in terms of shonen, it's up there with the best ever.
It's great. There's not one thing. There's not one person I can't be like, I wouldn't recommend it to them. It has something for everybody.
Somebody hates superheroes, I guess.
If somebody hates X-Men like style of superheroes or hates shonen, that's about it. Like, really great characters, really great personalities, very dynamic. The creator is wonderful. He has so many great ideas. Like, I remember reading, separate from the anime here, but reading an interview, and it was like, what gave you the inspiration for Shigaraki? It's like, I like hands. I like drawing hands. Yeah. And he's like, after a while, I was like, oh god, I have to animate this. But it's just like, it's just kind of like that thing where it's like, what you always find fascinating, where I would have never thought of somebody like Shigaraki as being like, oh yeah, definitely a character I'd have in a shonen or whatever. It's like, but it works.
Yep.
So oddly it works. And I love it. Yeah. So
it's excellent.
I'll never say anything.
It probably should have been number one, if not for something else that just blew our freaking minds.
Yeah. So, by the way, love My Hero Academia. If you have any questions, you can ask me. Everybody in the world who knows I watch it, ask me, because I've read the book.
Oh yeah,
and I read the manga, and I've like, Jeff even asked me questions about their quirks, and I'm like, well.
Wow. Let me put on my teaching hat here.
Let me put on my spectacles. So number one, I think to nobody's surprise, unless you've been under a rock this year, is Made in Abyss.
Yeah.
And I think if you haven't looked at my other videos...
I thankfully got the opportunity to write a script and record for... The literal title of it is Why is Made in Abyss a 10 out of 10? It is that transformative piece. Mm-hmm. Like, I mention on occasion, and I always say it, I'm going to have to say it now every single podcast, I don't view myself as a hoity-toity kind of anime. It's going to be a thing now.
You are now going to be hoity-toity.
As an anime, as a consumer of anime. But I've always said that beyond everything else, like My Hero Academia Season 2 takes what has worked and puts it into just like the best that it can be. What trumps that is something that is just as good and is transformative to the genre. Mm-hmm. Stuff like Ghost in the Shell did that. Akira did that. Cowboy Bebop, I feel, did that. And that's what Made in Abyss in 2017 has done. Is that it has transformed what I perceived as being possible in an anime series.
It's so interesting because we were just about to watch it in its season, and I remember Jeff had put it up really quick while I was in the other room, and I walked out and I came back in. I said, did Ghibli make a new movie that I was unaware of? No. And he said, no, this isn't anything from Ghibli. And I'm like, come on. And so I was looking through the information, and no, it wasn't from Ghibli, but I was like, the landscape, like if somebody just spun you around and put you in front of a computer and just said, okay, it looks identical to Ghibli, like environments, colors, absolutely. Atmospheres, like everything speaks Ghibli. But it's very, can I say, what's the word I want to use? Not deceptive.
No, because
I don't want to say deceptive.
That's one of the things I love about it, and
what's
I mentioned
the word
it
I want
in
to
the
use?
review.
I'm just going to talk...
Disarming, I think.
Yes, that's the word I want to use. It's never dishonest. Disarming. Because your first impression is, there's a bunch of cutesy little kids going around digging holes and mining. And you're like, okay, this is going to be very moe. This is going to be very, like, saccharine. It's going to be great. And within the first episode, you learn that things aren't as great as they appear. And it's a rather dark anime. I cannot stress that enough. Do not let kids watch it.
Yeah, that's
stress that enough.
The meme going around about Made in Abyss. Yeah. It's like, this looks really cute. It's rated M. Oh, no.
Yeah, it's very... With that said, it never lies to you. It says exactly what it hopes to accomplish. We go on this adventure with our characters, and it gets very dark. Even though we have children, we are dealing with dark content, and it's not afraid to go there. I've even read the entire manga up to this point, It keeps getting darker. I didn't think it could get darker, but it does.
But again, in the world building, that's what it promises.
That's what it promises.
The further you go down here,
I never thought
the more messed up, the worse it gets.
That's the thing.
And they do not lie about that.
I didn't expect it to get better reading. I just thought, oh, well, I know where it's going, and it gets worse. But worse in the sense of for the kids, not in the not in the manga or anime. It gets really, really good. The voice acting is stellar. Our world is immense and telling, and the creatures within it are, again, we're put in the place of our characters where we have very little information about the creatures in this whole. We don't understand what's at the bottom. We don't understand, we have vague notes from other explorers that happen to get back to the surface of what it means to be in each layer.
What and are even some then, of the... we're told that, at some point we're like, well, we don't know if this is even true or not. I don't know if this was written by this person.
We're like, there's no name. We
don't know.
That's the thing. It's like you made it to the top, but there was no name. Did somebody write this as somebody who was an explorer? Was somebody who was planning to deceive us? Was it somebody who was hoping to compromise us? You don't know because they're not signed, some of these papers. So, it looks like so-and-so's work, so let's put it in with theirs. But you can understand pretty quickly that, okay, this is the worst that can happen. It's not. It gets worse. But I find it's very heart-wrenching. It plays on all of your feelings. Not in the sense of, fear and mystery, but in the sense of, how far is too far. Where, I don't mean in the sense of, content, but in the sense of, what you can get away with and still find enjoyable, if that makes sense. There are very gory scenes, I'll say that, ones that aren't pleasant by any means.
Oh no, they're definitely designed to make you
very disturbed,
uncomfortable. Sugar turned away.
For one of the scenes, I had to look down.
She turned away, and I watched until it was over, and I said, "Okay, it's over."
Yeah, because we watched, obviously. I don't think there's a dub for it yet. It's all subbed. No. So I was like, "Can you read it to me while I look down?" Because some parts with kids, especially with kids, for me, I can't handle. Can I say? Wounds, let's call it that. And it was really hard for me to watch. It's hard enough when I was playing freaking The Walking Dead when I had to cut up. I'm not going to talk about that, but in the PC game, it's hard enough for me to watch that. But when it's done to a child, I have a hard time.
And that's how you should feel.
No, I know, and it's meant to make you feel that way. It's just one of those things where you don't expect it, and so it's even worse.
And the thing again. The world building started with them saying,
it never promises that it'll be...
They 100%, right at the start, they're like, you are this level, don't go beyond this.
Yeah, if you go past this, don't come back.
Yeah, if you go beyond this, you just don't come back.
Yeah.
You can't.
And then they're like,
the further you go down, it gets worse every time. We don't want you to go down there. But then, there's this... hero worship that they have of people who have gone down further.
And that's the thing. Second episode, they have this whole festival of all these people that were the best of the best explorers, and they're like, well, where are they now? We don't know. Yeah, it's so are they dead? We don't know.
Yeah, we don't.
And then as they're exploring, we see that some of them have just decided to live there because they don't want to go back. And then you see what the pit has done to them, and that's very dark.
And the best, and I mentioned it in the review. Please go watch the review if you haven't yet. Yeah. It is also spoiler free, but it really mimics what humanity has done in to progress. Progress has never been at the expense bloodless.
Of somebody else. Yeah.
And so it's sort of how far is a human being willing to go to essentially explore the unknown.
And that's the thing that's explored, where it's it's a little more explicit in the manga. I believe the anime does a good job of following it. There are just certain conversations and things excluded. But even, let's say, trying to skirt around this without giving anything away, where one of the explorers, who's a big deal, somebody brings up the fact that he's doing less than reputable things, and they're like, we know. Yes. It's just the fact of, but by him doing this, it means that we get answers to other things, so we just don't do anything about it. Yeah. And anybody who's decided to do anything about it hasn't come back. Like, so it's like, at what cost are you willing to compromise things, and how far is far enough to understand the world that you live in? And it's incredibly, like, it's so good. Like, if you have time to watch it, like, it's great. Like, it's one of those shows that nothing I can think of is like it. Not in the sense of, like, combining beautiful scenery and characters and ideas with something so dark and horrific and bloody and just, it's just intense. And I remember several episodes where I was just sitting there gobsmacked, where I was like, I don't know how to feel. Like, I feel really sad, but at the same time, I'm kind of happy for them, but I'm like, more so sad. And it's just like, especially by the end, I won't say anything, you feel very sad, but yet on the very episode you get like this uplifting section where I won't talk about it, but anyways, there's like very much like peaks and valleys where like little successes and little sadnesses could become greater successes and greater sadnesses. It means like one thing means another. And so
I mentioned it in the review that, like, because of the world they live in, even small little feats, you are so relieved and you are so happy for them.
You're like, this should only take us this amount of time, but it's like, that time is impeded by these things. And it's like, holy crap. Yeah,
it's, in my little notes here I wrote down, it is wonderfully optimistic and crushingly realistic as to what the world that they have built would be like. Mm-hmm. And again, I love the fact they don't lie to you once. They tell you in the first 3 episodes, they're like, this is horrific.
Yeah.
What you are signing up to do is horrifying, and almost all of you will certainly die.
Yeah.
That's the reality of this. And they don't shy away from it one bit.
Yeah, if you decide to go down, it will get much worse for you. And it does. But you find out why they want to go to the bottom of the abyss. You find out why people have stayed in the abyss.
You get it. Like, it makes sense.
It makes sense.
Because
it imitates what has already happened in our history.
Yeah. You know, we sent explorers out into the middle of nowhere and told them essentially the exact same thing. Yeah. We have no idea what's over there. Do you want to go? And
it actually reminded me when
some humans are just like that. They're like, yeah, I'll go. When we eventually send people to Mars and we're like, we don't know if you'll live, we don't know if you'll be able to grow food or anything, there are going to be people who are like, sign me up. Yeah. I don't care.
Yeah, that's what I told you. It reminded me of the book I read many years ago. I think it was called Endurance. Basically about this crew that goes to the Antarctic and then things go awry, and then it's like, but you signed up to go. Yep. So now you just have to deal with it. And it's kind of like our main characters. They decide to go into the abyss against warning, and you find out why they were born.
Yeah.
And that's the most that we should really say.
Yeah, and the fact that, like, it perfectly shows why some people are like that. Some people just have that in them.
Some people don't care about other people.
Regardless of what that is. Yeah. Like, some characters, they're in it purely for selfless reasons. Yeah. Some are in it for family reasons. Some are in it because they're just like...
thrills.
Yeah, this is the thrill of... This is the last unknown place on Earth.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I?
Yeah,
somebody has to. And again, I say it in the review, but like, what that does to people who they're like, I've already went this far. Why wouldn't I go further?
Yeah.
And then, why wouldn't I go further? And then, like, we could sit there and we could be all happy-go-lucky and be like, well, it's such a good thing that these people don't exist in real life. Oh, yeah, they do.
And that's the thing.
In the pursuit of progress, there are some people who will do anything and everything and more.
If you need examples, I have...
Second World War.
I was about to say, I have extensive knowledge on the Second World War and the Holocaust. So I know lots about the experimental side of things. But
so, yes, a lot of what we said, this is heavy. This is
incredibly
heavy. It is...
I'm going to tell you again, because some people don't seem to heed this warning, and people are interpreting. Just because it looks cute, it is not meant for kids. I can't tell you that enough.
I'm one of those people who are like, you know what, lots of things that say, oh, you should be 17 or older, like, like 12.
And it's like, oh, okay, there's one scene where somebody...
I feel like 16 maybe is the youngest, because
nothing under that.
I've got, like, we've got some, like, you know, nieces and nephews who are, you know, around, like, 12 or 13. I don't know if our niece would be able to handle this. Like, it is.
I would not. No. It depends on your child, but honestly, I don't think any kid should be watching it because it's very heavy, it's dark, and it'll make you feel things you didn't know you could feel.
Yeah. As opposed to something like Girls Last Tour, like, it's heavy philosophically, so I feel like lots of kids would be bored.
Yeah, kids wouldn't see that.
So I would say, like, it's for adults because we have the cognitive capacity to understand. It's the Calvin and Hobbes thing,
what we were talking about before with Girls Last Tour, where adults will see it for what it is, kids will see it for what it looks like. You know what I mean? When I was a kid, I was like, "Oh yay, Hobbes, he's a tiger!" I was like, that was amusing to me. It wasn't until I was much older where I was like, "Oh, that was very deep." Like, I feel like that would be the same thing where if kids were just sitting in the room and it happened to be on, there's nothing that's like vulgar or terrible, nothing like that. It's just philosophically deeper. This is deep in every aspect of bloodshed, in fears, in mystery, in anything. It is deep. And kids should not be in the room when you watch a lot of these scenes because it's dark.
So it's one of those things that, due to that, it's going to last forever because
it's going to be one of those things.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I couldn't imagine a 12-year-old watching Akira and getting it, or Ghost in the Shell and getting it.
No.
Cowboy Bebop, they'd be entertained. Like, that's one of those 10s where I'm like, yeah, even if you're 10 or 12, like, you'll understand it. It's fine. But
spaceships, cowboys.
This is one of those things where it's like, yeah, if you don't want to disturb your kid,
this will give them nightmares.
At least 16, I would say.
It's heavy content, heavy ideas, heavy scenery, heavy. It is heavy.
And you are rewarded for braving through it by it being one of the most transformative pieces of anime that's come out in the last 10 years.
Not about 10 years, but it's immense. I can't think of anything remotely close to it and anything that could compare to it in the past or the next little while.
And even, like, we've got friends who don't like anime as much as we do, and he finished it, and he was like, and he doesn't necessarily like super heavy stuff, and he was like, this was
That's exactly.
Really
he's like,
cool.
Tell me there's a manga. And I was like, yes. And he just read through it really quickly. And he's like, it's not finished. So now I'm sad. Like, it's just like, I just have to wait.
I'm sad now.
I'm sad because I don't get to read more. It's like, well, it's still ongoing. But
that's
our
number one
anime
of the season. It's
heavy.
Great. It's dark. It is.
I know it sounds it sounds terrible when we say it's that dark and that heavy, but it's so good. The voice acting is really great. The animation's great. The story, the idea, the message, everything is great and spot on, and is very true nature to what humans have done already.
Yeah. Voice acting, animation, storytelling, character development, world building, like every category that you care about in terms of anime, it's impeccable.
Anybody who says they want something deeper, this is deep. This is as deep as the ocean gets in this year. And
I mean, they're obviously just like, there are people out there who don't get the big deal about Cowboy Bebop, and you know what?
It's not even comparable to Cowboy Bebop. It's better.
No. Well, I mean,
in my opinion,
arguably, but it's one of those things where I can understand to a degree if you can't get over how graphic it can be, then I mean,
if you can't handle scenes,
like if you can't handle
blood,
it, you can't handle it,
and
you will know the exact point at which
it will come to you right away.
And it's probably been spoiled if you've seen much of anything.
Don't say anything.
But no, I'm not. I'm just saying is that it got spoiled for us, and we were watching spoiler-free reviews, and they friggin' spoiled it.
Yeah, FYI, I will never do that, because that's a dick move.
Yeah, the thumbnail. The thumbnail of your spoiler-free review spoils a huge blanking plot point.
I just wonder if some people don't understand what spoilers mean. Or
there is just one scene where if you can't make it past that, you shouldn't keep watching.
Yeah, because from that scene, you'll know when you see it. It's one of those things where it's like, you won't know unless, when people say, oh, I think I broke my hand, it's like, you'd know if you broke it. This is one of those things where you'd know if you don't like it. It's at that scene. You will know when you see it.
You can't handle it, and that's 100.
Yeah.
It's not going to be for everyone, and that's fine. It's reviewing quite highly. I think it's easily in the top 5 in MAL this season, I think.
Oh, the season likely. Everyone loved it. Everyone talked about it, reviews, why it worked, all that things. Everyone came out about it. So, those are our kind of like 5 cents about everything. Again, we didn't include everything for obvious reasons. We had a list of 10 and then our honorary mentions. If there's something that you liked, let us know in the comments down below. If you want to know why something didn't make the list, I can make that clear to you. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Jeff, for joining me.
Of course. This is our list together. Why wouldn't I? I'm just for the sake of looking. Yeah, Made in Abyss currently, as of recording this, is at an 8.92. Which, that's pretty damn high. It should have its ranking right there. Not on mine because I'm using the MAL client, so I don't get to see that.
I'll look really quickly on my phone because my computer has other things running.
Yeah, so it's an 8.92 on MAL is really good. Like, I think My Hero Academia, Hunter x Hunter, which is considered one of the top best, is like 9.1.
Made in Abyss overall on MAL right now is 18. So that says a lot. When I'm not talking about the season, I'm not talking about the year. I'm talking ever.
Yeah, in terms of score.
That's a big deal. So
for something that is that graphic and that heavy, like that's
a big
hell
deal.
Of a thing to do.
It's a lot of accomplishments with this anime.
And it's also got a bunch of people who are probably rating it low because they're like, like screw all you people being taking the trendy one or something like that.
Oh Lord. Okay. Anyways, people of course gonna vote things, and everyone likes something.
People.
Yeah, people are gonna love it. People are gonna hate it. Everyone has different tastes. Not a big deal.
Let us know if you loved it.
Yes, let us know if you loved it, if you've watched it, if you plan to watch it. Love y'all. See you later.